All right, one more thing on the draft lottery is brought to you by Hungryroot. Everyone in my house always has something going on. I call this busy season. I don't have a lot of time to go grocery shopping or to cook healthy meals at home. That's why I use Hungryroot. Hungryroot is like having your own personal shopper or a nutritionist wrapped into one. They take care of grocery shopping and meal planning, offering personalized recommendations based on your tastes and health goals. With their high quality nutritious food, I can stick to my gut friendly, high protein diet without spending hours of planning. The meals come together in 15 minutes or less, giving me more time for workouts, for work, and for maximizing my nights with friends and family. So take advantage of this exclusive deal. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Code LockedOnNBA for 40% off and a lifetime free item. Recording this on Tuesday morning. Wes Goldberg here with David Ramil. After finding out the draft lottery results, the Mavericks are the story, David, jumping up from 11-1 despite just 1.8% odds. Here's the part, though, that stings for Heat fans. If they had not become the first 10 seed to make the playoffs out of the play-in tournament, they would have had the 11th seed in the draft lottery on Monday night. So it's hard not to wonder what could have been. Instead, the Mavs move up. They're going to have the rights to draft Cooper Flagg, who some people are saying is the best prospect to come out of the draft in the last 10 years behind only Victor Wembanyama. And it's hard not to imagine that could have been the Heat. Instead, the Mavericks get the break. They get the lucky break. And the Heat, they go to the playoffs, get wiped off the floor by the Cavaliers, and are facing a lot of questions this offseason. So my question to you, David, is should Heat fans be upset this morning?
Yeah, you don't want to tell anybody how to fan. At the same time, I get it. It feels like it would have been, a logical conclusion that you could make to say, oh, 11th seed, that would have been Miami's seeding. They could have gone it, but feel it for a little bit. Let it wash over you. Feel the wrath, feel the anger, and then let it go. Because who knows how it would have played out. It's called the draft lottery. And look, there's enough talk already, and it's just talk, obviously, but it's already kind of being hinted at that this was sort of rigged for Dallas's favor after they lost their franchise player in Luka Doncic, and the whole franchise got screwed. So the fan base they needed something to rally behind, and certainly getting the first pick in the draft is something to look forward to in terms of bringing that group back, because it is a passionate fan base, no doubt. So I don't know that Miami, certainly, who knows if Miami had that ping pong ball in there instead of Dallas, would it have swung in their favor? It's impossible to say. We never have seen a jump like this before. It just feels like it could. It's so astronomically small odds of this happening that it feels almost futile to me anyway to really resent it for too long. It's kind of like, oh, damn, that sucks. It could have been Miami. But really, there's no way of pinpointing the chances, the probabilities of this happening again and landing in Miami's favor.
Atlanta did move up from 10-1 last year. It feels like this keeps happening. And so it's not, I want to explain a couple of things here. It wouldn't have been the exact same odds because the draft lottery isn't the same odds at every pick in the top 14. It's weighted based on tied records and not if two teams are tied. Dallas actually had to win a coin flip with Chicago. I feel really bad for Bulls fans. They had to win a coin flip for Chicago for the 11th best odds. They win the coin flip. Chicago ends up getting the 12th best odds. So this could have easily been the Bulls, just as easily. So the Mavericks not only got lucky once, they got insanely lucky twice to do this. So they have 1.8% odds. It's actually less when you kind of compound all the odds together and figure out, oh my God, this was insane that they ended up with the number one pick. I want to touch on the rig thing because I do think it's at least a fun conversation to have. But the Heat would not have had exactly the same odds. They actually would have had a 2% chance as opposed to a 1.8% chance had they missed the playoffs. Now, you could read that and say, oh, well, then the Heat certainly would have had the number one pick. They had even better odds. Not so fast, right? The 1.8% odds is a different set of numbers as opposed to the 2% odds. So we don't know exactly what numbers the Mavericks got to get the number 1 pick, which ones came out to get the number 1 pick. And for those, just really quick explainer on the draft lottery, it's not like an envelope. It's not, hey, 1 ping pong ball out of the thing. Every team has like an insane amount of set of different ping pong balls. And if your set comes up, it's almost like Scrabble where you just have a thing in front of you. And if your set comes up, then you get that pick. So Miami might have had the set that came up for Dallas to get the number 1 pick. And all this stuff would have been, oh yeah, Miami would have the number 1 pick, or they might not have had, because they wouldn't have had the exact same set of numbers. So we don't know for sure that if Miami lost, then they would have just vaulted up to number 1. So that's part of it. Before I get to the rigging thing, Kevin Love tweeted right after, "You got to be kidding me," or something to that effect. Do you think he was talking about just the historic nature of, oh my God, Nico Harrison made the biggest mistake and then fell ass backwards into the number 1 pick to save the franchise? Do you think that's what Kevin Love was referring to? Or do you think Kevin Love was referring to the fact that Miami could have had the 11th odds?
I think it's the latter. I think Kevin, we know his dry sense of humor. We've talked to him enough. It's I'm sure he, like a lot of Heat fans, are wondering, we went to the playoffs and it was the goal and everything else, and it makes a lot of sense to aim for the playoffs. But after the historic shellacking that the team took, it's also pretty, I think, likely to feel like that was a futile thing to attempt, because they were just so undermanned, or not undermanned. They were just so down bad versus a Cleveland team that was so much better than they were, that it's hard not to say, if we hadn't made the playoffs, maybe that could have been our pick or something like that. But maybe a little bit of both. But I think he was moving towards the latter. Like, as a member of the Miami Heat organization, you could always wonder, oh, that could have been us. And that would have jump-started so many conversations in Miami's favor. Like,
Could you imagine Miami with Cooper Flagg? Oh, so the Heat have never had the number 1 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
They're one of, I think, 6 teams to never have the number 1 pick.
Huh. Interesting.
Part of that is just because when the expansion year, Miami wasn't the only expansion team.
Sure.
And then that's usually when you get the number 1 pick, right? So they weren't the only expansion team, so they didn't. Well, do you remember if that was a coin flip situation, or I can't remember exactly why they didn't end up with number 1?
I think it was a coin flip.
I think it was a coin flip thing.
Yeah.
And then so they didn't get the number 1 pick then, and obviously have not had the number 1 pick since, right? There was the best chance was in 2008.
2008.
Yeah. Yep. And Chicago ends up getting number 1 with Derrick Rose, and Miami gets number 2 and ends up with Michael Beasley. Other than that, Miami's never really had a chance outside the expansion coin flip, and then that year they haven't really tanked to that level. But if Heat fans are going to be upset, I hear you. Man, Cooper Flagg, Miami, that would have been something, right? Generational prospect, Eric Spoelstra, this development staff. I mean, it would have been a home run. But you gotta play big to win big. And this Miami Heat organization is as risk averse as any organization in sports. But I'll also say this. Dallas is playing with they were risk. I think it would be fair to characterize the Luka Doncic trade as risky. I'm not saying that the plan was, hey, let's trade Luka, make sure Kyrie tears his Achilles or whatever it was, and then end up in the lottery. And then also make sure Anthony Davis tears or strains his abdomen in the first half of his first game in Dallas. This was not the plan. And by the way, the basketball gods do not exist. I'm done. Like I don't think they exist anymore. But this was also a loss. This year, this lottery was a loss for tanking, for legit tanking. Utah didn't get the pick. They moved down. Right. Washington didn't get the pick. Brooklyn didn't get the pick. It was a loss for tanking.
I mean, I know we're going to have the rig conversation, but even before that, I wonder, would drafting Cooper Flagg have changed the intention of this front office? Like, would they have done a different reset?
Right.
Maybe that's something for another episode that we can
get
into more details.
I think we can do it now. I don't know that we'll ever talk about Cooper Flagg in Miami again. I don't think so, because everybody says how NBA ready he is. Had this been a different kind of prospect, maybe. But then even with a raw prospect, you're like, well, we're not going to just trade Bam and Tyler to reset our timeline around a guy who's kind of a question mark. Even if he's the number 1 pick, we feel good about him. But with Cooper Flagg, I think you would just draft him and say, well, we've got Bam, we've got Tyler, now we've got Cooper Flagg.
Would they still have gone the same route of trying to acquire a star? Like we talked recently about Kevin Durant, Giannis Antetokounmpo.
No, I don't
with
think
Cooper
so.
Flagg there. Yeah.
No, because interesting. So if you have the number 1 pick, do you shop it for Giannis?
Ooh. Yes,
Do
I think
you?
so.
I think you have to
Yes.
take Cooper Flagg.
I don't know
Rookie
why you
sca
would.
rookie contract, under team
Okay.
control, no free
I get
agency
it.
looming in 2 years. Unless you know Giannis is gonna resign with you, I guess you could do the LeBron goes to Cleveland 2014. They trade the Wiggins pick, the number 1 pick for Kevin Love, understand that Kevin Love's gonna sign right away.
Yeah.
Maybe there's something like that, but man, like Wiggins wasn't a Cooper Flagg level prospect. Even in
No.
the moment, that's not even a hindsight thing.
No, never. Yeah.
Um, I don't know. I think you almost have to take Cooper Flagg. The interesting thing is, what if Miami ended up with like a top 4 pick,
Mm.
and it's like, all right, Dylan Harper for Giannis. Now we're talking. I feel a little bit less icky about that one.
Yeah, I wonder if, with Flag on the roster alongside Tyler and Pam, like what's the path for this team to improve all those other positions? And you
Mm,
need to add depth, you need to do something differently. And maybe that's the route that they would have gone. That's all I'm saying. Would it have changed
right.
whether or not you still try to get a superstar, or whether or not you would have just fleshed out the team's depth, which is still an area of need
Yeah.
as well.
Could you
So
have gotten Durant even without having the 20th pick in this draft, instead using the number 1 pick on Cooper Flagg? Phoenix would have said, we want Cooper Flagg. Miami would have said, absolutely not, unless we're
right,
talking Devin Booker. And even then, probably not.
right,
And then could you still have used your 2 future first round picks plus, I don't know, Wiggins and Duncan
sure,
Robinson and some of the, and then here's Jaime. Maybe you feel a little bit less bad about losing Khalil Ware because you have Cooper Flagg now. It's like, all right, you wanted Ware then? Now you can have him. I don't know. You could have done all of them, all of it, perhaps, maybe, or you could have said, we got Cooper Flagg, we got Bam Adebayo, we got Tyler Hero. Pat Riley's 80 years old, but sorry, dude. Like, we'll give you a ring when we win one in the next 5 years, even if you're not in the front office anymore. But yeah, I don't know. It would have been really fascinating. You get Cooper Flagg, and then maybe you focus on lateral moves to just flesh out the depth of the roster
yeah,
and try to do a little bit of what Boston did in the early years with Tatum and Jaylen Brown, where you say, hey, we got Kyrie Irving, we got some
hmm
good pieces here. We can still make playoff runs while developing these young players.
right,
Let's have the rig conversation. Because I tweeted it, hey, tough break last night. And a lot of responses were, oh, well, this is rigged, and the NBA wouldn't have rewarded Miami the same way they just rewarded Dallas. Before I ask you whether or not you believe that to be true, and I'm not saying that the NBA is rigged. We are working in a hypothetical world in which the NBA is rigged and what that might look like, which I think is a fun hypothetical to have no matter what.
I agree.
But I guess the argument for it being rigged for Dallas would have been 2 things. Hey, that was really weird that there was no bidding war for Luka Doncic. I
Hmm.
wonder why. Was it because NBA ratings were down and they needed Luka in LA? And did the Mavericks get a promise? Hey, you trade
Ooh,
Luka LA, we'll make sure you get Cooper Flagg.
wow, I've never heard that one before. Is that
And then the
is that a,
second,
a Wes original, or is that like, have you
I
heard the
heard it, I saw
scuttlebutt
it
about?
somewhere.
Okay,
I didn't come up with that one. This one's mine, and it's not nearly as creative. But hey, there's rumors of you trying to move Dallas to Las Vegas. Don't do that.
hmm.
And if you don't do it, we'll make sure you get the number 1 pick.
Okay,
But that would have been more after the Luka mishap. The Luka mishap was not related to the number 1 pick. I like the first one a lot more in terms of
sure,
reasons for rigging.
yeah.
Um,
But they
but
probably would have gotten past the Minnesota Timberwolves in the first round of the playoffs too, had that been the case. Like if they were all in on pushing the Lakers narrative even further than it's already been pushed over the last 30 years, I think they probably would have gone a little bit more all in on that. At least try to kind of force them past Minnesota. Although again, if you're looking at
the
Anthony
refs
Edwards as the
kind of
face of the
tried.
NBA,
Anthony Edwards is just too it's just too damn good. I don't know. He overcame the script. So that's so all right. So I think that's a fact. I'm not saying the NBA is rigged. If it is rigged, that would be why.
okay, all right.
Right?
Now I could see the argument about why they would give the pick to Miami too. Again, in this theoretical world of
Right.
rigging the pick for a franchise, because Miami has always represented the exact opposite of tanking. This is kind of like, all right, because you're not you're
Ooh,
always
right.
pushing for the playoffs because you always represent the quote unquote right things. You play ethical basketball, etc. And because you are a glamour team, because basically you got screwed over by the whole Jimmy Butler situation too. Here's a little something. Pat, we appreciate everything you've done over the last 40, 50 years of you being part of the NBA. Here's a little going away present or something along those lines. Like there's a lot you could say there
Like send a
as to why.
message. Hey, this is why
Yeah,
you don't tank. If you try
exactly.
hard and work your way through the regular season, you may still get rewarded.
Yeah, yeah.
This is
It's
this is the league's and that same thing with Atlanta, right? Like Atlanta wasn't good last year, but they were trying. They were not tanking at all. They
right.
end up going from 10-1. The NBA can keep pointing to a string of results saying, "Look, all you people tanking, it doesn't work. 10 went moved up to 1, 11 moved up to 1."
Hmm.
It could be a plot, a multi-year plot to curb tanking. I like that one. The other reason is the Jimmy Butler thing. You already mentioned it, but we saw this when, if the NBA is rigged, we'd look at a few different lotteries. One of them would be LeBron leaving in 2010. Cleveland
Yes.
gets the number 1 pick and gets Kyrie Irving, generational prospect at the time, and ended up being that. Anthony Davis leaves New Orleans. They get the number 1. They fly up in the lottery, end up with Zion Williamson, generational prospect. People were talking about him as the best prospect since Anthony Davis, LeBron James at the time.
Sure.
What was the other one? Those were the two. Those are the two that I could think of when the guy left the team that the departed team ended up getting the number 1 pick. Jimmy Butler isn't quite LeBron, and
No.
he's not even really Anthony Davis the way Davis was in New Orleans that year. But it's still a market that matters to Miami. And I've always pushed back against LeBron left Cleveland, so the NBA rewarded them for the number 1. I don't think the NBA cares if Cleveland's good. The same way I don't care if the NBA cares if New Orleans is good. The one really good New Orleans lottery rigging theory is when they ended up getting the Anthony Davis pick because the NBA finally found somebody to buy the New Orleans Pelicans. And everybody's like, well, was that part of the deal? You buy the Pelicans and you get the number 1 pick and you get Anthony Davis coming out of Kentucky, who's this blue chip Tim Duncan type of prospect.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I like that one.
I mean, this has all been going on for 40 years since Patrick Ewing was
Yep.
drafted with the first lottery.
Frozen envelope.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just, that the corner was banned. Like, there's so many different conspiracy theories.
Well,
I don't know.
does Miami as a market matter enough that having lost Jimmy Butler in the manner in which they lost him, would that have influenced the NBA to rig the draft lottery for the Heat and so for them to get the number 1 pick?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Yeah,
I
me
think they're
too.
viewed as one of the top franchises in the league, and they do operate, in my opinion, but I think around league circles in the right way. Maybe that's a judgment call, and certainly it's subjective. But I think the idea that Miami, competes and tries their best and is willing to spend money, and they again one of the top payrolls in the league year in and year out. They do have a great fan base. They do make a lot of money for the league in terms of ticket sales and things of that sort. I think they're a marquee name. They're not a
Yeah.
Los Angeles. They're not a Knicks team, but they're not the Bulls even. And the Bulls sell out, but maybe they would have been. See,
They're probably
again,
right
the
there.
Bulls.
They're probably like right there. It's the Lakers, it's the Celtics, I think, are the tops. And I would put Miami
Knicks.
and the Knicks, I guess. And then it's Miami, Chicago. Houston, maybe even. They have a history. Maybe not Houston.
No.
San Antonio. They don't really
No.
care.
No. They've got enough number 1 picks over the last couple of years.
They're above the Clippers, even though the Clippers are in Los Angeles.
Yes, I'd say so.
They're above Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're right there. Miami, Chicago, kind of worked hard, mid to large markets, glamour markets.
Yep.
Worked hard to have a great history. That's what it is. All right. So the verdict is, the Heat screwed up by making the playoffs. We could have had Cooper Flagg because it would have been rigged for us either way. Thanks to Hungryroot for sponsoring this segment. Get 40% off your first box plus a free item in every box for life. Go to hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA. That's hungryroot.com/LockedOnNBA. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night until an NBA champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NBA Game Night on Locked On NBA and on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.